Have you with us here as we get ready for Georgia and Georgia Tech tonight. We were going to go on at around 7, just couldn't tear myself away from that Alabama Auburn game. For heaven's sakes, what a finish to a football game between Auburn and Alabama. I did the last interception. Did that count as a touchdown? Auburn had Alabama, and for if those games can have the weirdest conclusions. We all know about that. Alabama pulling out the victory over Auburn, and it looked like, well, it was Alabama's. Alabama season was certainly on the ropes, and then somehow, some way, miraculously, Alabama comes out and wins that football game over Auburn. Yeah, that ending was unreal. I agree with you, Joshua. It's just you almost can't believe it, and it's the 10th anniversary, of course, of the where Auburn ran back the punt, I'm sorry, the field goal, and won that game. The 10th anniversary of that tremendous run by Jordan Davis at the end of the game for Auburn to miraculously beat Alabama today. Alabama miraculously beats Auburn. Just un unbelievable. What a football game. What a finish. A good friend of mine who is an Alabama fan, sent me a text and said, "Hey, Georgia might want to watch it with Georgia Tech tonight. These rivalry games are weird, and they certainly are. They can produce some interesting results. But we're just 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes shy of kickoff for Georgia and Georgia Tech tonight, and we thought we'd get in here prior to the game, give you the opportunity to tell us what you think and what your prediction is. Our prediction earlier in the week was Georgia winning 42-7 over Georgia Tech. Now, I'm not really good at those scores, predicting the scores. I'm sometimes I'll get the outcome right of who's going to win the game, but I say 42-7. Georgia will win this game over Georgia Tech tonight, but we'll have to wait and see. Of course, the game is at 7:30. It's at Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta. It's on ABC. And Joshua says the final was 27-24. Yeah, I left pretty quick. I didn't know if the last pick six was going to be the last interception was going to be counted as a touchdown. So Alabama beating Auburn 27-24, and that is a game that Auburn should have won. You got to say that. But Alabama saved their season and their hopes of being in the college football playoffs, and now you know what's ahead for Georgia. First of all, tonight, of course, it's Georgia and Georgia Tech. And listen, this game is no gimme. You can't say this game is a gimme. It's going to be a tough game for Georgia. But Georgia is highly favored in this game. The last line I saw was like 28 points or something like that, with Georgia being the favorite over Georgia Tech tonight. We have a shot of Bobby Dodd Stadium with the beautiful Atlanta skyline in the background. One of our buddies sent us this shot of Bobby Dodd Stadium, Grant Field, historic Grant Field. So here we go, Georgia. Now it's Georgia's turn to make sure that they have an unblemished record as they go into the SEC championship game. The Bulldogs are on verge of making history tonight with a win over the Yellow Jackets. That will make it 29 consecutive wins for the University of Georgia, the longest winning streak for any SEC school. Right now, Georgia is tied with Alabama. Alabama did it twice on two occasions, winning 28 games. Georgia is tied with Alabama. If Georgia wins tonight, Georgia will set the SEC mark for the most consecutive wins. Georgia also is looking to extend their 38-game regular season winning streak, and Georgia also is looking forward tonight to securing another undefeated regular season. Joshua says, I wonder if that close score will determine anything for the playoffs. This is the tightest I think that there's ever been for trying to determine the who's going to be in the college football playoffs. It's gonna be come down to how everything shakes out on championships Saturday, which will be next week, and I think the Pac-10 plays their championship game, which will be quite a football game. Apparently, I guess Oregon and Washington, and that will go a long way to determining which Pac-12 team will be in the college football playoffs. It's just going to come down to, oh boy, I just, there's so many different scenarios that who's going to be in the college football playoffs. It just all comes down to who wins on the field. Georgia beat Tennessee last week, of course, convincingly, 38-10. Georgia has won 5 of their last 6 games by double digits. Carson Beck, tremendous season for Carson Beck. He's thrown for 21 touchdowns, over 3,300 yards through the air. Georgia's defense, of course, playing very, very well. Georgia Tech coming into this game is a massive underdog. Georgia Tech has accomplished one of their goals for this season. They've won 6 games, which makes them eligible to be in a bowl game. And Georgia Tech rather has been playing fairly decent down the stretch. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. They are 4th in the ACC in their division, ahead of Clemson, North Carolina, and Miami. Georgia has dominated this rivalry. We all know that. Dating back to their first meeting in 1893, Georgia is 70, 39, and 5 against the Yellow Jackets. I think Georgia Tech has a different count than that. And but it's a rivalry. So each school is going to have its own count of who's done what. So tonight it's Georgia Tech. So what do you think? We're saying 42-7. What do you think? What is your prediction for this game? Man, it's been. Hey, Michael, how you doing? It's been quite an exciting day. Just perusing over and looking at some of the scores. Some of the late games are beginning now. But here's some of the late games. Florida State tonight, of course. That's going to be of great interest to Georgia fans. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually pulling for Florida to take out Florida State. So we'll have to wait and see. It's kind of weird to pull for the Gators. And of course, earlier today, Michigan took out Ohio State 30-24. And Michigan played, those 2 teams. I'll just be honest with you. Michigan, Ohio State, those 2 teams. They're good. They're very good football teams. You stick them in the SEC. I'm telling you, the quality of those 2 teams. I don't want to use the word overrated, but I don't know. I'm not convinced. But Michigan beating Ohio State today, 30-24. Kentucky. How about Kentucky taking out Louisville, 10th ranked Louisville, 38-31. Alabama winning over Auburn, 27-24. Just an unbelievable game. LSU winning over Texas A&M, 42-30. Let's see. Utah taking out Colorado, 23-17. And just checking down some of the other scores that might be of interest to us. Now, there's some games tonight, of course, that are very interesting. Tennessee, of course, winning over Vanderbilt today, 45-24. Washington is beating Washington State. Now, that's a game that has tremendous implications for the playoffs as well. Number 5, Washington leading by 1 point in the 4th quarter over Washington State. Let's see. Anything else here? We're trying to refresh our scoreboard here. But what do you think about this game tonight? Benji says 52-13. All right, Benji, how you doing, brother? 52-13, Georgia taking out Georgia Tech. So I don't know. Beck goes crazy first half. We'll save him for the second half for our next week. UGA 52-10. Okay. It sounds reasonable. But You just never know. Okay, Patrick says Washington State just tied it. So tonight, I have the weird position of pulling for the Gators. Really? Seriously? For Florida to take out Florida State. Now, this is just me. You may be a Florida State fan as well as a Georgia fan, but that's all right. And by the way, my scenario was for today for Michigan to beat Ohio State, and then next week Iowa to beat Michigan, and by a score of 5-3. People make fun of Iowa and their offense. And did you see in the Iowa game where the guys had the t-shirts that said punt? And every time Iowa, which is known for its punting game, apparently, every time the Iowa would punt, the guys, the cameras would go on those guys. That was a lot of fun. Matt says I hate rooting for Florida also. Yeah, but we got to do it tonight. Sometimes you got to hold your nose. And so yeah, it's kind of crazy tonight. Injury wise for Georgia, Warren Brinson, he has a calf injury. He's very questionable. Probably won't see him. Tate Ratledge, he has a knee situation. He's questionable as well. Ladd McConkey, of course, Ladd has been dealing with a back issue and an ankle issue as well. He's questionable, and Robert Thomas with a foot injury, he's questionable as well. Julian Humphrey, shoulder, he's questionable. Jamon Dumas Johnson, arm injury, he is doubtful for tonight. Just a little bit about our injury situation. I don't think you'll see Ladd on the field, to be honest with you. You might. But I think, Ladd's been, he has the disc issues, and now he's had the ankle issue from the game last week. So, you probably, I don't know if you do that'd be great. It'd be good to see Ladd out there, but I got a sneaking suspicion that you won't see Ladd McConkey on the field tonight. Now for Georgia Tech, offensively, Georgia Tech is much better than they've been in the past. Defensively, however, Georgia Tech is Georgia Tech when it comes to defense. Hayes King is the Georgia Tech quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback. He's thrown for over 2,500 yards. Jamal Haynes has rushed for over 850 yards. Their best receiver is Eric Singleton Jr. He's received for 610 yards. And so, Georgia Tech offensively is better than they've been in the past. They're kind of in the upper, I guess, quarter of the ACC offensively. Defensively, it's kind of a pedestrian defense, and so Georgia should be able to, offensively, if Georgia comes out like they did against Tennessee, for heaven's sakes, then I think it may be a long night for Georgia Tech. Now Matt, to be honest with you, I don't think Georgia Tech will score 20 points. To be honest with you, you know, yeah, the ACC, the ACC, you got Florida State, Clemson's down, North Carolina is sporadic, and Louisville, now it's Louisville and probably, I guess Florida State in the ACC championship game next week. And by the way, Louisville is fully capable of beating Florida State. Louisville inexplicably losing to Kentucky today. So, it's kind of interesting. Carson Beck, just to kind of review some of his stats. Carson has thrown for over 3,320 yards, 21 touchdowns, 5 interceptions this year. Dejon Edwards, a running back, he has 725 yards rushing and 135 attempts. Kendall Milton, 81 attempts, 488 yards in rushing, receiving. Brock Bowers, 51 receptions, 660 yards. And that's, of course, even that with being out with an injury. The Rod Mike, by the way, Brandon talking about the Florida State quarterback. That was terrible, terrible injury that the Florida State starting quarterback, experienced last week. If you saw that, if you saw the replay of that, you didn't want to watch it twice. That was just a terrible injury. Rodmaker, however, is a good quarterback from Valdosta, Georgia. Be kind of interesting how he does tonight, leading Florida State against Florida. Again, it's weird being a Gator fan for a night. Okay, but I can do that. We can do that, because it would be nice to, every team that can be, an undefeated team that can be knocked out of the way in Georgia's way. Just, we're just thinking all about Georgia making the playoffs, which certainly we believe Georgia should, the number one team in the country again. Let's see, Rosemary St. Jack has 29 receptions, 472 yards. Does Beck leave after this year? I think Carson. I think a lot's going to depend with his evaluation by pro teams, and what happens with these college players, from what I understand, is that pro teams will just be honest with a lot of these college players and say, look, we've evaluated you, we've looked at, and they have consultants, and we've looked at you, and you'll go in the third round, or you'll go in the fourth round, or then sometimes you'll have an honest assessment from someone and says, you're good, but maybe you could use another year in college. My sneaking suspicion is if Georgia wins the national championship, Carson's gone. If Georgia doesn't win the national championship, then I think Carson's going to consider coming back. But I don't know. I don't have any kind of inside information or anything like that. I'm just kind of speculating on that kind of deal, and we'll just have to wait and see. But Carson, I tell you what, there's no better. People are certainly talking about Jaden Daniels as I guess the leader in the Heisman Trophy race. If you offered me a swap between Jaden Daniels and Carson Beck right now, I would stick with Beck with this Georgia team 100%. I think he's the perfect quarterback for this Georgia offense. And I think we can all agree that Mike Bobo, he's our man now. Whatever you may have thought in the past about Mike Bobo, until he really messes up again, we got to say, he's our man now. And so Georgia's clicking on all cylinders. It's rivalry Saturday. Now, the thing I want to see is, please, Georgia, don't let Georgia Tech score first. Can you please get off to a fast start, put up 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, and let's get this thing underway and relax a little bit. Enough with this letting the other team score first. And of course, I made the comment last week when Tennessee scored that first touchdown on the first play of the game. I kind of made a comment, last week on our program that I think Kirby Smart had gotten together with Glenn Schulman and say, hey, just let them go ahead and score first. Let's get it out of the way. And that's what Kirby said. It's all in jest, of course. But it'd be good to see Georgia, really go. If Beck stays, Brock leaves, and Gunner stays, either way. Okay. Well, that's what Patrick says. And you got Rayoli coming in, which, by the way, Buford High School lost last week. I don't know what. I got some kind of alert going off. Oh, yeah. My wife's got a cake in the oven. Sorry. And I'm supposed to tell her when it's done. That was the alert I had. So there you go. Well, I'll tell Mom in a minute. The cake is almost ready. Georgia Tech quarterback Hayes King beat Alabama when he was at Texas A&M. Yes, he did. Georgia Tech's got some players now. They got some players. So, well, yeah, I know I need to get off and tell Mama the cake's ready. Let's see, just going over the schedule right quick. For Georgia, just to kind of remind you, Georgia opened with a big win over Tennessee Martin, then Ball State took out South Carolina, UAB. Georgia beat Auburn, then beat Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and now tonight, Georgia Tech. And then next week, next Saturday, 4:00, it'll be Georgia and Alabama for the SEC championship. Wow. And I still can't get over that Alabama-Auburn game. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? What a football game. And what a weird way. And, to save your season, because if Alabama had lost that game, that would have shot them for the college, any opportunity for the college football playoffs. Now they got a big shot if they take out Georgia next week. So we say that Georgia's going to win this game 42-7 over Georgia Tech on a beautiful night, as you can see, a beautiful night in Atlanta at historic Bobby Dodd Stadium, Grant Field. And so go Georgia. We'll be back with you at halftime to get your opinion on how things are going with the University of Georgia. And then, of course, we'll wrap it up tonight after a big Georgia win over Georgia Tech. So, hey, I guess let's go I got to go tell Mama to get the cake out of the oven, and then we'll get us a Mountain Dew and sit down and watch this Georgia and Georgia Tech game. Go Dogs.